Good morning, everybody. Yeah, so like Paul mentioned, I'm in British Columbia, Canada. I've been up since 4:20 my time, which is 7:20 your time. I forgot to tell my brain which time zone I needed to be ready for, I guess. Yeah, so like Paul said, I'm Melody. I'm in Chilliwack, BC. I was born 3 months premature, weighing less than a pound on November 12th, 1981 in Oakville, Ontario. I was rushed to McMaster Hospital, where after a short time, I was diagnosed with hydrocephalus. At first, one VP shunt was placed, and then eventually two were placed. I've had multiple revisions up until about the time I was 5, and the estimate was about 7 surgeries. That's my favorite baby picture of me. There's very few of them. I was gathering them all for this, and there was 13 altogether, which is funny considering nowadays I probably have 13 pics of my kid every day. So I was complication free and complication surgery free until I was 20 in 2001 when my left shunt broke at my neck. I'm the little kid in the red there with the shaved head, and you can faintly see my scar, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. That's me as a happy kid on a rocking horse that my dad made. Nice. So yeah, like I was saying, I was complication and surgery free until I was about 20 in 2001 when my left shunt tubing broke in my neck. So I was told that the tubing can become brittle over time. I went to the local ER and sat for hours and hours in the waiting room, and I wasn't seen. So I went to the other local hospital, and within a few hours, I had my surgery booked for a few weeks from then. With the x-rays from that surgery, it was interesting because it was the first time in my life I got to see all the shunt tubing throughout my torso and in my body, and it was really neat to see. And I wish I had a picture of that. Yeah, so during an ultrasound also for that surgery, I found out that both my kidneys are attached and on one side. And I was surprised that with all the medical procedures and scans and x-rays I'd had throughout my life that it took 20 years to find that out. And I still remember the bus ride to the hospital that day. I have the burnt CD that I listened to, and it helps remind me that I can live through difficult, painful, and scary situations and be okay, and be more than okay. I was again complication free until about 10 years later when I was 30, when my right shunt began to malfunction. This time it wasn't obvious, obviously broken in my neck, but the symptoms were the same. So when my shunt malfunctions, it affects my eyesight because when the CFS builds up in your brain, it presses on the optic nerve, affecting the blood flow. And I was working at a greenhouse at the time, so I would bend over to pick up trays, and the further I bent over, the more my vision would be decreased and just filled with little black dots until there was no vision left. So I knew what was wrong, but it wasn't showing up on the scans. I had multiple CAT scans and MRI, and it took months and months of going to doctors. And finally, I went to my neuro-ophthalmologist, and doing what she does, she could see that the pressure was increased in my brain, and that so she recommended that my neurosurgeon do a lumbar puncture to prove that there was a CSF buildup and that my pressure was too high and that my shunt was broken. Yeah, so I'm just gonna have a glass of water, drink water, just set. Yeah, so anyone who's had a lumbar puncture will know that they're not pleasant on a regular day, let alone when I was only about 3 months pregnant at that point, but hugging my legs up to my chest and holding them was quite uncomfortable. So my lumbar puncture, the lumbar puncture confirmed that my pressure was high. It was very high, and I was I was told that if I wait until after I give birth to my daughter, that I could lose my right eye. So I thought that luckily, I'd had surgery during my adult life, so I knew what to expect. And I knew that I'd be fine. It wasn't a brittle tube that broke this time. It was brain dust, they said, or I like to say brain junk. So who knew that was a thing? I didn't until then. The internal fetal medicine doctors, on the other hand, they didn't seem so confident. They looked pretty nervous. And I had just listened to my daughter's heartbeat for the first time. So when the doctors asked if I'd like to have an abortion, I was pretty shocked. So obviously that didn't happen. I knew I would be okay, and I knew my daughter would be okay. But knowing that I'd have surgery while I was pregnant, I just made sure that I'd have someone, or that there would be someone apart from the neuro team during the operation to monitor the baby. So yeah, I was confident all would go well, but just in case, I left instructions, like I'd seen on a Grey's Anatomy show years before, where if anything happened to me, I would be kept alive to, incubate my baby. And just a note on Grey's Anatomy, if you haven't seen it, there's one of the main character's daughters has hydrocephalus in the show, which was pretty awesome to see. Yeah, so it was a morbid thought, but it was also quite comforting. So I had successful shunt replacement surgery at about 5 months pregnant. It was on February 28th, and yeah, that's the scar. Sorry for anyone who might be a little queasy with that. I do like that they put the same, they go in the same spot. But yeah, it's pretty awesome to see to some degree. Yeah. So it was, so I had my shunt surgery on February 28th, and it was a leap year. So the next day in recovery, when they ask you multiple times, it feels like a million times a day, what day is it? What time is it? Where are you? It was February 29th. And I kind of felt like they kept trying to trick me. Like, I know it's the 29th. I know it's a leap year. I know what day it is. Like, can I get out of the hospital now? So it was also the first time that surgery that I'd ever gotten sick from the anesthesia. So I joked that it's because the baby didn't like it. So after months of dealing with doctors to agree that my shunt did need to be replaced, it finally all got finished. I was also finishing my horticulture apprenticeship program, and now it was just time to wait for the baby to come. And I was lucky; I never had morning sickness or any of the other, regular pregnancy complications and things like that. So I guess there was an upside. So I was told that the birthing process would be the riskiest part because of the pressure from straining and muscles, and but I never got to the pushing stage of labor because my daughter's heart rate was irregular, so I had to have an emergency C-section. And I was told that because of the lumbar punctures that I've had throughout life, that my epidural space wasn't where it should be. So when they gave me the epidural in the delivery room, it wasn't working. So when I did go in to get my C-section, the doctor pinched me very, very hard and was like, "Can you feel this?" to make sure I couldn't before she performed the C-section. And going into the operating room, it was neat because I had the surgery at the same hospital I had my brain surgery at, because I needed to be near my neurosurgeon. And one of the nurses was one of the nurses on my shunt replacement surgery months before. So that was quite comforting. And because I had to have surgery and my pregnancy at a different hospital, it wasn't my local hospital, and it was about an hour away. So when I got there, they're like, "Oh, you're only 2 centimeters dilated. You can go home." And I'm like, No, I just drove an hour. I'm not going anywhere. So my daughter was born 4 days late, healthy, strong, at 7 pounds, 5.8 ounces. When I was pregnant, I had my belly painted by a local lady, and my daughter was, her feet were moving around, or her body was moving around, but I think it was feet, because the paintbrush was tickling her feet. Yeah. yeah, so my daughter's now 10. I'm now 40. We're perfectly healthy with no complications, delays, or difficulties. And we're very grateful for that. At times I do have a bit of shame of putting my daughter through, the trauma of surgery while in utero. But at the same time, I get to look at her with two eyes and I'm here with her. So it doesn't last too long. So having hydrocephalus was one of the first of a long string of adversities in my life. I have close family members with serious medical health issues, alcoholism. My parents were divorced when I was in middle school. I had typical teenage years and 20s of partying. I had an abusive marriage. But I'm now happy. I'm a single mom who's self-employed, so I can be there for my daughter whenever she needs me. And the best part is that I love my life and I love my work. Like Paul mentioned, I'm Canada's first certified nature-connected coach. So I get to bring together my love of nature and my love of helping others in unique ways every day. So I use all the stuff that I've lived through in my life to help others to create a life they love. I help them love and accept themselves for who they truly are. I help them see their past doesn't define them and that they can be everything they want to be. I realized in the last 5 years through coaching and then becoming a coach that the story we tell ourselves makes all the difference. I used to think of myself as a weak little sick kid. Like I was always different and that I never belonged anywhere. I remind myself and my clients, and they also remind me, that we can thrive, not just survive, through fear, pain, and trauma, to a place of self-acceptance and self-love, with community and wholeness. We can take all our pains and turn it into our passions and our purpose. Coaching in nature has helped me to see myself as not separate from the world and everyone else in it. Connecting with others with hydrocephalus has helped me know that I do in fact belong. I'd never tell anyone with hydrocephalus the thoughts or the things that I used to tell myself. So I changed my story to I am strong, I'm healthy, and I belong. This picture is from about 5 years ago. It was 5 years ago at the end of August. And I'm about 150 feet up in a Douglas fir tree, one of my favorite trees, or it's my favorite kind of tree. That's why my business name is For Real Nature Connections, fir with an I, like a fir tree. And yeah, sitting up in this tree that day changed my life, kind of led me to the path of where I am today. Proof that you can do things that kind of never seemed imaginable, but there I am sitting up in the tree. And I was there for quite a while. Someone asked me when I got down how long I was sitting in the tree, and I had no idea. I just said until my butt hurt, and they told me I had to get down. So now I joke, I call it tree time. Yeah, do things that you just lose track of time. I'll always remember the first time I met someone else with hydrocephalus in person. I was doing a fundraiser for Hydrocephalus Awareness Month by guiding a nature connection walk. It was actually a year ago tomorrow. So it wasn't adult me meeting this 9-year-old boy and his family on the trail. It was a little kid part of me. I shook his hand and I asked for a hug. I cried so hard, and so did his mom. Talk about instant best friends. Seeing this boy with hydrocephalus and my daughter, who were the same age, run off into the forest was so amazing. It was like watching myself connect in a way I'd longed to my whole childhood. Really my whole life. Because I was. I cry every time I say that story. A big part of my coaching work I do is called parts work, which works a lot with self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-love, and how different parts of us impact our daily choices, actions, and beliefs. That day, there was immense healing for all parts of me, but especially my inner child part. I didn't think I realized how truly alone and disconnected she felt, how I felt, being the only one who knew what having hydrocephalus was like. Obviously, I don't wish that on anyone, but there's so much comfort in knowing I'm not alone. And more importantly, that I could help him feel not alone, to grow up in a world where he truly knows he's not alone. I'll always be here for him and his family. And I'm so grateful to have met them and others in this community. I didn't know there was Hydrocephalus Canada and all these things growing up. It's only been the last year or two. So I'm super grateful to be here and to now have this community. Better late than never. So I never could have imagined how that day would change my life. I've never felt closer to wholeness since that. Sorry. I've felt closer to wholeness since that day, and it's helped me step more into my true self and share it with the world, like I am today. I also have a part of me I call the fighter. The name's changed a little bit over the last few years, but really that's what it is. I've been reading my medical records from the first few months that I was born, or first few months of my life. And I can only read a little bit at a time because it's pretty hard to read. It's challenging to process as I go. There's lots of tears, there's lots of anger and emotions expressed. I know it's the fighter part of me that endured all the procedures and tests and surgeries and loneliness and fear and all the emotions that came along with being a preemie and having hydrocephalus. She's also the one that got me through all the other hard times in my life. I also know it's her who has the strange calmness when we go into a hospital, and I always seem to know where I am or where to go, even though I've never been there before. She's the reason I'm here today, and I thank her often. I hope my story helps you, whether you have hydrocephalus, know or care for someone who has hydrocephalus, or are a supporting member of this community, to fight to become everything you want to be in life, and not let anyone tell you you can't. I know you can, because I can, and I am. And just to plug a couple other hydrocephalus community members, Danny Lamb and Emma Stobin, both hydrocephalus ambassadors. I was recently on Danny's podcast, and we found that we all have the same neurosurgeon, the three of us, Dr. Hollenberg from McMaster. And that's pretty awesome. And we plan on reaching out to him and just chatting and saying thanks. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you for having me. Thanks for your time.
Great. Well, that's well, thanks, Mel. I don't know if you can stay on the line a little bit. There might be a few questions. I just personally, I really enjoyed your what the remarks that you made. You said it with grace and courage and sincerity and a touch of humor. And I think those of us who have experienced hydrocephalus either through in their life or their relatives or their family, certainly what you say definitely resonated with all of us. I'm just curious myself. Chilliwack, I don't know my geography that well. Is that in the interior, on the coast, or where is that?
So it's the southwest coast, BC. It's about an hour south of Vancouver. I'm actually closer to the Washington border, like Sumas, Washington. I'm about 20-30 minutes from there. So yeah, southwest BC. And today it's cloudy, it might be a little cooler, but we've got great weather and we don't get as much snow as Ontario, which is part of the reason I moved here. I mean, I love the snow, but it's the rain here makes for the big trees. So
well, that was my next question. Like whenever I've been to Vancouver, it always rains. Do you get as much rain as they do?
Probably a little bit more actually. Chilliwack is down the Fraser Valley, so it's kind of in a bowl of mountains. Every window I look out, luckily where I live, I can see mountains. So the cloud and all the rains get stuck in Chilliwack, so it actually rains quite a bit here. But that's why we have the big trees. So I mean, when I'm complaining about the rain, I'm like, that's why we have the big trees. That's why you're here.
Well, maybe over to you, Shauna. Is there anything in the questions or the chats that you'd like to bring up?
Yes, we have one question, and it's regarding your pregnancy. Were there any precautions taken by your OBGYN and your neurosurgeon when you were made aware that you were pregnant?
So it was, the typical take your folic acid and the prenatal vitamins. I probably had more like pre-pregnancy checks than most women, most pregnant women. And then, yeah, having the pregnancy and the delivery planned for having it at the hospital where my neurosurgeon could be there. But other than that, it was just kind of, typical pregnancy stuff. Mind you, I did also, it could have been because of the surgery. Like I stopped working in January. So not that I was on bed rest or anything like that, but it was just more of, like, take it easy, be aware of how you're feeling. Yeah, which I think everyone should really be, I was lucky to have the chance to just take care of myself while I was pregnant.
And you also had a shunt revision during that time, during the time of your pregnancy. Was there any precautions that they took for the baby?
There was a lady sitting there who her only job was to monitor their baby.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We have a question from Dave. He says, I'm 33 and I was born at McMaster as well. Who and how can I get in touch with to be part of that meeting with Dr. Hollenberg? He was also my doctor.
I got goosebumps. Hi, nice to meet you. Yeah, you can email me, melody at furrealnature.ca, fur with an I, so FIRREALNATURE .ca. That's my email. You can also find me on Facebook under Melody Rose or For Real Nature. Yeah, and if for some reason that doesn't work, contact Hydrocephalus Canada if they can give you my info. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can do that. We
Yeah.
also have not a question, but a statement. Nicole says, thank you for this wonderful testimony. Her daughter has hydrocephalus as well. She's 45 and had Dr. Hollenberg as her neurosurgeon as well when he was in Montreal. So I'm sure that Dr. Hollenberg has helped a number of people in our community throughout his career. I know that he's been retired for several years now, and it's wonderful that you're going to try and reconnect with him.
I feel like, can we compile a list? Everyone email me. We'll make a list. And yeah, I think like when I first was talking about with it to Danny and Emma, it was like the thought of just being able to just see him and be like, thanks, and I've been meaning to email him, but I haven't, because I wanted to find my baby pictures, which I finally did to show today. So like next week I'm going to email him, and I might just mention like, talk, and there's a lot of people out there who just want to kind of reconnect or just say thanks. And I can't imagine how that would feel for him, decades later, to be like, look at us now.
I think it would be pretty amazing. Thanks so much for your talk today, Melody.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.